Thank you very much for inviting me, and also thank you very much to Professor Robertson-von Trotha and everyone who invited me to this event. It's a bit depressing, but at the end, I think maybe together after the question we can find something more promising about the future of Turkish democracy. But today, first of all, I will draw a picture a bit more depressing about what is coming in the Turkish politics, the transformation of Turkish politics actually. I will speak about the transformation of Turkish politics with a focus on the rise of authoritarianism and with a focus on the role of state of exception. It became almost a permanent in the Turkish context, and the role of the suppression of the freedom of speech in that case. But before, to understand very well, to capture the role of the state of exception in this transitional period, I think we have to just very shortly sketch about the main characteristics of the Turkish politics firstly, and then I will gonna give you more detailed analysis of the measures has been taken with this state of exception and how this state of exception prepares the ground for transitional period in Turkey to this authoritarian transition. And then we will gonna very shortly talk, I would like to talk about very shortly how we can characterize actually this emerging authoritarian regime. What's the correct term to describe this emerging authoritarian regime? And then lastly, we can talk about what can be the other directions for future of Turkish democracy. Is there any other directions or not? It's also, or it is unavoidable, unreversible process in the Turkish context. So if you look at the current policies of Justice and Development Party, AKP, Adalet ve Kalkınma Partisi, you can clearly see that there is a kind of dominance of authoritarian populism in the Turkish context. This authoritarian populism depends on leader-centricism and the presentation of Erdogan as the main leader of the Turkey, as the embodiment of the national will, embodiment of the opinion of the people in the Turkish context, and it depends on the dominance of the friends and foe conception. I'm sure you are familiar with this such kind of conception with the work of Schmidt. Turkish society has been polarized along the lines of friends and foe by this authoritarian populism. There is on the one side friends of the new Turkey, so-called Yeni Türkiye, and on the other side there are you can see from the speeches of President Erdogan, you can see from the speech of the main party leaders. On the other side there are the foes of the current Yeni Türkiye, new Turkey, so-called. The friends are, who are these friends? These friends are loyal to, these friends are the people who loyal to the Erdogan and his party, and who are the foes? Foes are can be anyone who is against, anyone who is critical against the current policies of the President Erdogan or the AKP actually. It is highly dangerous conceptualization actually. This is what Schmidt says, it is the heart of politics, but it's highly dangerous polarization in Turkey, dividing the Turkey into two lines. Actually, the Turkish or Kurdish community into two lines. You can see it in Germany among the Turkish migrants, you can see it in Turkey, you can see it in everywhere because of this imposition of such kind of understanding. And also, this populist project depends on very catchy and sticky emotions like resentment against old so-called owners of the power, so-called Kemalist, so-called secular groups, or anyone who is critical about the Turkish Islamic synthesis actually. So resentment, anger, and will to power are the main emotional constituents of this kind of authoritarian populism in the Turkish context. And it depends on constant stereotyping of opposition, secular people, Alevis, Kurds, or anyone who is not supporting the Erdogan's current project, and foreign people as well. It can be associations as well, or the countries as well. And also it depends on constant criminalization of opposition. As you can see from the recent actions taken in Turkey, the supporters of the human rights associations, like the Amnesty International, has been arrested because of, with the so-called charge of being part of the terrorist organization. So anyone is not part of the current power bloc can easily be found himself with the charge of terror propaganda or member of the terrorist organization. It's very general, and it's full of conspiracy theories. If you read it in English, unfortunately most of the writings didn't translate it in English, but if you read it pro-AKP journals in pro-AKP media organs in English or in Turkish, you will realize that it's full of conspiracy theories. Germans try to divide our country, Americans try to do that, and French people trying to do that. Even Turkish scholars giving a presentation in Germany and trying to do that. I mean, it can be anything about it, and it's connected with everything. And this conspiracy theory is so widespread in almost in everywhere. So all of this project depends on the revitalization of the Turkish Islamist ideology again, which is firstly conceptualized after before 1980s, but firstly became a determining ideology after the 1980 coup, and then AKP revitalized it and circulated it, and then with the education curriculum, with the media, with the civil society, more pro-AKP civil society associations. So it's a well-known Turkish Islamist ideology in a new bottle. But AKP was successful until Gezi movement and until 7th June election to presenting this kind of political project as democratization. Of course, with the help of some national and international circles, party became successful in presenting such kind of Turkish Islamist ideology as something as a kind of democratization of Turkey. What happened after 7th June 2013 elections and Gezi movement, and after 2014 June election, party see for the first time a kind of strong political opposition, and then parties see for the first time strong civil society organizations, democratic civil society organizations, and then AKP started to shift the line more towards revitalizing security state of the Turkey from 1990s. And then what happened? Actually, Kurdish question, the key point at this transformation from so-called democratization into revitalization of security state is the Kurdish question. Kurdish question became once again a question of security, sovereignty, and order again. And then there were a war between the PKK and the state armed forces, especially in the Kurdish region. Most of the Kurdish cities has been destroyed, and too many civilians lost their life, and too many also members of the army and police forces lost their life. And then almost all apparatuses of the security state has been revitalized, and AKP started to oppress political opposition in Turkey, started to oppress for the first time more than rigorously freedom of speech in Turkey. So what happened after Gezi movement and 7th June election? As I said, AKP as governing party started to revitalize security state apparatuses in Turkey. And I'm sure that 15 July failed coup attempt is also part of this securitization policies, and we can discuss it in more detail later. more detailed in later. After the 15 July failed coup, party find a chance to restore state apparatus again. And then they find a chance to oppress almost all opposition and expel almost all people who belongs to opposition from the state apparatuses. And they actually used as a chance to bring regime change in Turkey, to open the way for regime change actually in Turkey with the declaration of state of exception. If you look at the details of the measurements has been taken with this state of exception, you can understand what I mean by this, by preparing the ground for regime change in the Turkish context. So after the declaration of state of exception, after this failed coup, Turkish rule of law started to change and turned into, rather than being a rule of law, into a rule by decree. Government started to issue a exceptionary decree. With this exceptionary decree, thousands and thousands of people lost their job. More than 150,000 people lost their job without clear, without any kind of transparent legal processes. What happened? Legislation and implementation of the laws almost unified. This has very important results for the rule of law as well. Turkish state revived a kind of dual state and dual legality. Turkish rule of law turned into a kind of prerogative state. And on the one hand, there is a prerogative state. On the other hand, there is a kind of normative state. Of course, there is a kind of still legal arrangement or legal rule of law, a kind of in Turkey. But if you look at what's going on deeply, you can see such kind of duality at the rule of law level. And judicial discretion has been grown. And Turkish politics almost totally judicialized, or judiciary has been politicized. And actually with this all arrangement, I will talk it in detail, Turkish state create a kind of existential insecurity for the political opponents, for the academics in the universities, for civil society members, for human rights defenders. It creates a kind of existential insecurity. Everyone finds himself in a very insecure position. I lost my job because, for instance, you can lose your job just with someone put your name into the list, and then there is no clear any kind of appealment. There is no any kind of institution you can appeal to really learn why I lost your job, or what's the reason behind such kind of decision. There is not any kind of clear, as I said, transparent legal process behind it. It's very dangerous. Why it is very dangerous? Actually, it is the way to use law to prepare the ground for another kind of regime. And it is directly affecting the core characteristics of rule of law in Turkey. And it lost its legitimizing ground. Rule of law lost its also main principles like the justice, for instance. So it is a way to transform rule of law, and it's a way to prepare ground for new emergence of the new regime. What are these measures in detail? As I said, state issued several emergency decrees. It's in total 26 now. With this emergency decrees, state started to take several measures against the organizers, so-called organizers of the coup. But we don't know who are these people. And measures related to investigations, the measures related to judiciary, officials, military personnel, and also other institutions, civil society institutions as well. What are these measures in detail? First, the state institutions started to prepare a kind of list, and these people lost their jobs. Some of them has been arrested, more than 80,000 people. There was open legal investigations about more than 80,000 people. More than 10,000 people has been arrested. More than 120,000 10,000 people lost their job. All of these people lost their also basic rights and freedom, like they lost their passport has been cancelled, but more importantly, their basic rights and freedoms has been restricted, like their access to defense counsel during custody has been restricted, duration of custody has been extended. For the right after the coup, it was 30 days. Without seeing your lawyer, you can be under custody, and then it has been a little bit limited with the 7 days, as you can see from this, and then there are other measures as well. All the people who has been accused as being member of FETÖ organization or being member of terrorist organization or making terror propaganda, they lost their position, they deprived their position. They will not be re-employed again in public service. They will not readmitted to any organization, any kind of organization. They will not reappoint directly, indirectly, or indirectly, and they will not work in any job which is related to public good, which means that actually you cannot find any work. And in the case of, for instance, Academics for Peace, the people who signed the peace petition, this means that they cannot work any kind of job related with public good. They cannot work either in civil society organization or in human rights organization, because all of these organizations are kind of related with public good. It is already declared with within the pages of the pro-party journals that the idea is killing these people civilly. I mean, they say that sivil ölüm. We have to kill these people civilly. I mean, we have to isolate these people. We have to restrict their any kind of rights and basic rights and freedom. We have to, these people shouldn't find any job in Turkey. I mean, we have to close all the doors to these people, and we have to punish them, not individually, but family. This is the most important thing. If you have expelled, this means that your family will lose their passport too. And they can get their passport, but they have to apply and then wait and wait maybe more than 1 year, and they can lose their position too. And then you can see that this is a kind of huge project to, to suppress any kind of opposition in the country. I mean, for the first time, it has been declared against someone who organized coup, but after just a couple of weeks, everyone realized that it has been used to suppress any kind of democratic opposition in Turkey. So what's happened? More than 2,000 civil society associations has been cancelled. You can see from this picture, this is just including the media institutions has been closed down since 13th of February. Most of them belongs to the, for instance, people or organization related with the Kurdish opposition. Most of these media organizations belongs to Kurdish opposition. I can give you an example. For instance, the cartoon TV has been closed down because cartoons are in Kurdish. And then they opened it, but with the caution that the cartoons shouldn't be in Kurdish. If you will gonna show the cartoons in Turkish, it's okay, but it's if it will be in Kurdish, and then we will gonna close it again. As a more striking example is for me is a association, civil society association working for the right of children, working against the child abusement in Turkey has been closed down. For instance, how this kind of organization can be related with some kind of terror propaganda or terror organization is an open question. But all this I know the people working in this organization. They are doing very well job about child abusement is widespread in Turkey. They are fighting for the rights of the children, and that this organization has been closed down, and they lost their financial resources. They lost their place. It's a kind of, actually, as you see, it's a kind of suppressing almost all public space using the state of exceptionary measurements. So I think the recent recent constitutional amendment should be evaluated as part of this emergence of new regime and paving the way for the emergence of new regime by state of exceptionary measures. If you look at the content of this constitutional amendment, you can clearly see what's going on in Turkey and how these amendments actually opened the way for rise of authoritarianism in Turkey. The first one is Article 104. It makes the president as head of the state, as head of the judiciary, actually as head of the legislation as well. The idea is eroding any kind of separation of power in Turkey. This is the main idea. And president will be the head of his party at the same time. It will appoint most of the members of the Constitutional Court. If you look at in detail also other article, it will appeal Supreme Board and judges and members of the Board of Judges and prosecutors as well. All in all, I mean, you can see from this picture much more clearly. This is from the Middle Eastern eye. I took it from there. I mean, it brings a kind of lifelong immunity from prosecution to the president. It's almost impossible to impeachment. I mean, you have to have more than 400 votes to to open a legal case against the president. Actually, it's almost impossible. There's a 550 members. You have to get more than 400, and president can run for 5 years terms, and then actually he will be, as I said, he has a power to dissolve parliament, and he will gonna decide, or she will gonna decide. We don't know. I am kept saying that but it can be woman as well. But it's obviously in our case will be Erdogan. But he will gonna decide the country's annual budget. He will establish ministries and determine their scopes, appoint ministers, appoint high-level state administrators, appoint all university heads directly, appoint all administrators, and the president will control almost all judiciary, because president will appoint the members of the higher board of judges and prosecutors and members of the constitutional court. Because he is head of his party, he will directly or indirectly control the parliament as well. And as I said, it's almost impossible to open any kind of impeachment process as in the US case. And there's actually, from the system, you can see that from this, the amendments, constitutional amendments, you can see that there is not any kind of checks and balances within the system. So there is not any kind of articulated separations of power within the system. You can see that this pushes for unification of the legislation and executive and also judiciary at the same time. This is not a presidential system, actually. As a political scientist, we know that there is a kind of strong separation of power within presidential system, as in the US case. Or the autonomy of the judiciary is very important, as we see in the US case as well. But because of this, party called it as a presidential system in a Turkish way. Turkish type presidential system, actually. It's not a system anymore, actually. This is just for me as a political scientist, this is just a system which is collecting all powers within one center, within at the hand of one people. So how we will gonna how we can define such kind of system, actually? As a political scientist, we are working about it. We are trying to conceptualize such kind of political system. As you see, there are several types of definitions, actually, and conceptualization, like delegative democracy, which depends on the absence of horizontal accountability, strong decentralized rule, individual leadership, and unchecked powers and the charismatic leader figure, or electoral authoritarianism, as very famous one, Alfred Schedler's work. The electoral arena is still a battleground, providing a kind of legitimacy ground, or the competitive authoritarianism. This is more fancy word, it's circulated nowadays. I mean, this refers to a system which is, to a certain extent, which includes free, fair, competitive election, adult suffrage, I mean, civil liberties, or the existence of reasonably level playing field between incumbents and opposition. I think all of these concepts are not enough to really to define the crucial characteristics of the emerging regime in Turkey. Therefore, I think we can define it and call it as a plebiscitary authoritarian regime. I mean, Turkish democracy is already turned into a kind of plebiscitary regime. Either you say yes or no, as you can see in the recent referendum. So almost all electoral process or almost all political process reduced into a kind of, I mean, confirmation or rejection of the president. I mean, every time people are voting, I mean, whether the Erdogan is the right person to govern the country or is not a right person to govern the country. So this is the idea of plebiscitary regime actually. The plebiscitary regime always organizes itself around the leader and reduces almost all political system into either yes or no. I mean, this is a yes or no democracy. I mean, we can say that. And it's also conducted through mass media. Media is very important to circulate political figures, political images, and also main dominant political opinions and ideas. You can see that these, I mean, ideas and opinions, I mean, the conceptualized around the conspiracy theories, for instance. And also it depends on constant personalization of politics. I mean, almost every aspect of Turkish politics turned into politics about some people, I mean, voting about one people or not. It refers to growth of discretionary power as well. It's also power it's also politics within which leaders shape and even manufacture public opinion and majoritarian will. In the Turkish case, what I mean is what is this majoritarian will is what Erdogan said. If he says yes to certain project, this is the national will. I mean, this is the way national will is constructed in Turkey. If he says something about, for instance, if he supports something and all the AKP media promote such ideas as the main ideas of the Turkish people. I mean, this is the majoritarian will. This is the nationalist will in the Turkish context. So you can see that this is majoritarian understanding of democracy, but it is specific form of majoritarian understanding. It's more plebiscitary oriented and authoritarian. What makes it authoritarian? As I said, erosion of any kind of separation between powers and suppression of freedom of speech, and also collapse of every part of public space, we can say. I mean, because of this, Amnesty International supporters has been arrested. Because of this, these civil society associations supporting child rights has been cancelled in Turkey. I mean, and finally, maybe I can make a kind of summary. What will be the result of such kind of transition from parliamentary, quote-unquote, parliamentary democracy to authoritarian plebiscitary regime? It will create a huge, it's already creating a huge deinstitutionalization of the Turkish state. Almost some ministries lost more than 20% of their all state officials. For instance, you can see in the education ministry, almost big universities almost lost half of their academics. I mean, if you look at my faculty, for instance, half of my faculty has been expelled because they signed the peace petition, and more than 100 students lost their PhD advisors. More than 30 courses, PhD courses, has been cancelled because of there's no one will give these kind of lectures anymore. So it refers to constant deinstitutionalization of state, because the idea for authoritarian populism is just to occupy these institutions. The populists like to occupy institutions, whether it's a constitutional court, whether it's a board of judges and prosecutors, whether it's universities. They love to occupy and to approach these institutions from the mentality of occupying them, because they presented these institutions as something belongs to people who are not native, who are not really, the Turkish Islamists. These people, as they always in their eyes, is against the Turkish people. These institutions is always in collaboration, working in collaboration with the foreign people against the Turkish Islamist people. They have such kind of mentality. They are approaching these institutions. They see these institutions as interrupting the political process. Because of this, these institutions are very dangerous, and they should be occupied by the people who actually should be the owner of these institutions, these constitutional courts. If you look at the pro-AKP journals, you can see such kind of discourse of victimization. So-called victimization. We are the victim of so-called secular Kemalists, and then we suffered a lot, and then they used these institutions to oppress us. They did a lot against us via constitutional court or blah blah. This story is so widespread and common, and this will lead to further, of course, pacification of opposition. If it goes further, you cannot talk about any more public space, and you cannot anymore talk about opposition in Turkey. It is step by step narrowing the political space in Turkey. Everything is against governing party can be dangerously related with terror propaganda by the governing party. Even my speech here is now, or anything about critical, it could be a caricature, it could be poem, it could be a columnist, it could be a kind of evaluation, it could be a Facebook status. Everything can be a kind of terror propaganda in Turkey. Everything is critical about actually AKP is promoted as terror propaganda in Turkey. It's a huge, widespread, enlargement of the discourse of terror. Actually, it's highly dangerous, I find, and also it means a further depoliticization of the Turkish society, because only way of politics is just becoming member of the AKP or supporting AKP. I am sure that in a couple of years, the main opposition party will be closed down as well. The RPP will be closed down. Almost half of the members of the Kurdish party is in jail now. Because of the charge of terror propaganda. As I said, it refers to the end of separation of powers and reduction of democratic decision making and collective will making to the expression of opinion and spectacle, just watching the main political figures. And also it refers to extreme personalization of politics around the leader figure. In this context, it's President Erdogan. And other ones also the presidentialization of leadership. I already mentioned it, and it also precipitates the ongoing disintegration of the rule of law, the transformation of the rule of law, and it's turning into just the legitimizing ground. For the rising authoritarianism. Also, it's also referred to unfair election and massive election fraud, as in the recent referendum. All in all, we can say that because of this, within all this picture, if I can just summarily speak about it, within all this picture, the declaration of state of exception and transformation of the rule of law, actually the disintegration of the rule of law in Turkey is closely connected, and the suppression of freedom of speech in that case is closely connected to open the way for this emergence of the new regime. It's not already institutionalized yet. It is already coming. And we see that there is a kind of rise of authoritarianism in Turkey. And authoritarianization of political space, authoritarianization of party politics in Turkey. But it's just a small part of the picture. After 2019 election, actually, all these constitutional amendments will be in power and then will be realized, and then we can see that such kind of, the effect of such kind of plebiscitary authoritarian regime in the Turkish context. And then we will gonna see a kind of unification of party, leader, and the movement, actually. And the party trying to organize a kind of movement and also trying to unify legitimacy and judiciary and executive at the same time. When all of them combine together, and then we will gonna see the actual result of the rise of authoritarianism in the Turkish context. This is the most dangerous thing we are waiting. This is the most real, but the most depressing part of the picture. I want to finish more optimistic part of the picture. And this is just one scheme from the recent March for Justice and the struggle for democracy in Turkey. I know that this is organized by the RPP, by the main opposition party, Republican People's Party, which is really state-oriented party. When you look at this history, when you look at even the discourses of his leader, it's more state-oriented, and also it's a nationalist party. But still, there are political pressures and there are political movements in Turkey, I mean, against such kind of rise of authoritarianism, which pushes further democratization at the same time. Also, we can talk about, there are strong women movement in Turkey, which pushes further the democratization. And we can say that most of the people joined in this movement, in this march, is also women. And there are also strong LGBT movement, there are strong still Kurdish movement. All of them are trying to enlarge the political space against such kind of authoritarian political movement in Turkey, we can say. But whether it will be successful or not, we cannot decide yet. Whether such kind of political movement create a kind of strong democratic oppositionary bloc, we don't know yet, historical bloc, we don't know yet. We can just think about, as a political scientist, think about it and try to formulate more comprehensive democratic political ideas and projects to give more hope to the people who is fighting for democracy in Turkey. Yeah, thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much. I think it's extremely important to see really how far and how deep the change in Turkey has already gone. Because we tend to hear the numbers, but when you see the structures and the system, we will let you join the discussion very, very quickly. Let me just catch on maybe one or two points. One point I thought, from the political scientist's point of view, you talked about the different kinds of democracy, or how we could describe them as concepts. And one which I think is extremely plausible is the presbytery authoritarian regime. Now, last night, and I'd just like to know what you feel about this, Daniel Böhmer was one of the speakers last night in the Rathaus, and he is a colleague of Dennis Yücel, and is also a correspondent for Die Welt and for other big newspapers. And he didn't use, of course, this term, but he made a point which we tend maybe not always to put into context, is that we have 51%, or 51.44 who voted for Erdogan. We know fairly well that that number was already manipulated. So in fact, if we look at what his background is now, for what he hopes to have 3 terms of 5 years,
yeah.
then he is in fact not a majority of people in Turkey who actually support him. And his thesis, and this has been my question to you, his thesis was that, of course, because of the way he has more or less put the media out of action, or oppositional media, or freedom of media, and the deinstitutionalization across society, means that, of course, he has, in one way, also made it necessary for himself always to show himself as a winner. So he is producing situations of being not of this kind of picture, but the victims, terrorists, him as a strong man, protecting the majority, but in fact the majority he doesn't have. So my question is, do you think he's going to be successful with this kind of concept? I mean, you see this in other places too with populism. That of course it looks at Brexit also, right? In the UK, Brexit. Saying some of the things you had on the board, the same kind of thing. You know, revenge against the elite and whatever. What do you think? What does he have to do from his point of view to be successful in keeping 51% or whatever? So he's going to have. And so, what can we do to make sure he doesn't?
I mean, I think it is. I mean, such kind of right-wing populist and authoritarian project is always a kind of fragility. Has always a kind of fragilities. I mean, it has its own dynamics. It creates its own opposition. I mean, constantly within itself and also outside itself. I mean, if you look at Turkey, for instance, I mean, using such kind of brutal force is a kind of signal that this project is not an hegemonic anymore in society. After losing the support of international community, after losing the support of liberal-minded people in Turkey, or the most segments of the the more educated people in Turkey, I mean, the only way to go for is the restoration of the state, to organize a kind of strong authoritarian state structure, and to oppress such kind of fragilities. In the Turkish case, in this recent referendum, we said that it's highly fragile. Even with such kind of huge amount of oppression, I mean, against the public campaign of the people who is struggling for vote no industries. I mean, the party policies couldn't be successful. I mean, they get we know that the number is manipulated from the reports. I mean, hugely manipulated, and they lost Istanbul, Ankara, Izmir, biggest cities. They lost young generation actually. I mean, even if imposition of such huge amount of hate speech and revengeful discourses, they lost the young generation. Support among young generation is decreasing. They lost main big modern sections of the society. But on the other side, if we don't know yet, we see that authoritarian regimes creates its own dynamics and can be sustainable to a certain period of time. I mean, it's an open-ended question. If the civil societies really get organized in Turkey, and if they really the oppositional political parties get organized around more democratic, for more freedom and equality-oriented democratic politics, which appeals at the same time to the supporters of the AKP as well, which has to appeal, and then maybe such kind of policies see more strong challenges, I think.
I will ask one question and then I open up to the public. A question which we, of course, here look at is the role of the diaspora. I think we see the polarization here of those who are Erdogan AKP supporters. We see it's very difficult to even organize any kind of a dialogue because they're so polarized. And we also see that, of course, wrongly in the media, said a majority voted for Erdogan. We have to say a majority went to voted for Erdogan here in Germany, but many didn't vote. So how do you see the situation here, which we look at it at the Institute for Foreign Affairs in Stuttgart. We've had workshops on the question of diaspora, not particularly on Turkey, but I think this is kind of a question which is ongoing, and of course the social media today, they can be very much instrumentalized and used.
I think, it's a very dangerous polarization between, depending on the friends and foe conceptualization, as I said. It's also reproduced in everywhere with the same form, in the same form. So it's also reproduced in Germany too. There are friends and foes, friends supporting Erdogan and foes, enemy of the people, or Ummah, or the Islamic community. We have to find, I am asking the same question myself in Germany as the visiting scholar. I'm asking the same question, and we have to find a way really to overcome such kind of polarization and to get into contact with these people and to really express our ideas. This is the success of AKP is cutting is a kind of ghettoization of Turkish society, cutting this kind of relationship. From my personal story, when I was a young children, I was working for the Social Democrat Party at the elections. At that time, I remember that the people from the Refah Party, Virtue Party, and the people supporting we have a connection with this. I remember the election for the first time Erdogan became the mayor of Istanbul. At that election, I was also working for another candidate, Zülfü Livaneli. He lost. But at that time, we still had a connection. We talked about politics together. We shared something. And this is important to build different kind of community between the people. Otherwise, the reproduction of such kind of polarization in Germany or in any place will prevent such kind of dialogue or such kind of emergence of democratic politics at the same time. It's difficult, but we have to think about it. It's a challenge. We cannot say, we cannot say all the people voting for Erdogan is also approving such kind of political project. They have confused. It's a electoral behavior is always a confused, it's a complex thing. We know from that. They have a kind of different images, and contradictory images, and they have also confused. We have to appeal these feelings and their rationality too, I believe.
Okay, thank you. Now we move to the public. It would be wonderful if you would also let our guests know who you are.
Thank you very much for the comments and questions. You are right. Not most, when I mean most, let's start from Kurdish question. Several of the, of course, Kurdish neighborhood has been seriously destroyed. But for instance, Cizre, when you look at some neighborhoods in Urfa, when you look at Diyarbakir, but if you check the, for instance, report of the United Nations, recent reports, it's more, it's really, you see how big is the catastrophe in the region, and it's a from a humanitarian aspect, from an urban aspect. 300,000, they say, people lost their home and migrated. The number is huge. Yes, Kurdish question is all the time very sensitive political issue in Turkey, and it's all the time part of all the time become a problem of securitization in Turkey. Even in the so-called peace process times, çözüm süreci, in Turkish, they never mentioned the name of the peace. They said that opening process or something, Kurdish opening, solution process. Even at that time, it's the problem of security. And Erdogan is very good at manipulating such kind of problem to appeal to his own electoral base. And at the end, he decided, it seems that President Erdogan decided it's better to appeal to the nationalist, Islamist nationalist historical bloc rather than try to appeal to people who is supporting such kind of process. But in any case, we can say that, I mean, from the intentions of the, putting aside the intentions of the actors, Kurdish question for the first time became publicly speakable political process. It's very important. I mean, he couldn't, we cannot say he really successfully manipulate everything. I mean, we cannot see him omnipotent actor, I mean, the controlling everything and manipulating everything. With the other question, yes, it's not a Gezi movement. It's really the reaction of the ordinary people. It's something. This is because of the success of the. I mean, I think success of this march lies in this. I mean, the people are here just for justice for everyone, justice for LGBT people, justice for women, of course, justice for ordinary Turkish citizen. I mean, justice for everyone, justice for the people who vote for AKP as well. I mean, everyone. I mean, because what makes the people is a common conception of the justice, and it is so collapsed as in the case of Turkey. People really feel themselves they are losing the country, or they are losing the last chance to say their criticism against government party.
Those who have taken part in the march,
Mm-hmm.
are they now at risk?
Mm-hmm.
Is Erdogan in the situation of being able to monitor who was there, and now they may be at risk?
Mm-hmm.
What do you think?
Sorry, can I ask again? Mm-hmm.
If you think that those who took part in
Yeah.
the march,
Mm-hmm.
are they now at risk? Are
Yeah.
they because he
yeah,
has
okay.
monitored
Okay.
who has taken place?
Yeah, but it happened in the Gezi time too. All the people joined in Gezi, almost monitored, and several years later, these people accused of being a member of terror organization or being in relation with the foreign forces, these kind of things. But I think people get fed up these kind of stuff. I mean, they really want to take this. They really want to take this risk, even if they have been monitored. And millions of people, I mean, more than 1 million people, at least we know. It's also very important to see how crucial is their
Further
action.
questions or comments?
Thank you very much. And this question is also very important to understand the future of Turkish politics. I mean, whether there is a kind of division within party or not. Of course, there is divisions. I mean, we cannot say that party is all the time homogeneous, but we can say that it's more homogeneous now in comparison with the old time. I mean, this recent constitutional amendment is a kind of action not only against the political opposition, but also to the AKP as well. Now, no one can say anything outside the discourse of President Erdogan and his advisors anymore. I mean, now party is more unified, and most of the, as you know, most of the founding figures has been expelled from the party. Not, I mean, the legally expelled, but they put it outside. Abdullah Gül, Davutoğlu, and more statist, Cemil Çiçek, I mean, and also all these figures are now sidelined a little bit. And now the party and Erdogan has been unified actually. Erdogan is the AKP, but this makes the party more fragile than ever. I mean, at the same time, he is controlling. I mean, he is appointing everyone in the party. He will now appoint every member of the parliament in the next election. But this makes the party more fragile because everyone is getting frustrated. I mean, it's a dominant party. If it is not divided, it's not easy the alternative political project to emerge. We know that from other cases, from Japan, from other countries, if the dominant party never divided, it's too difficult for the opposition. But it seems that now some part of the elites supporting the AKP project in 2000s now they are not supporting anymore. We saw it in the recent referendum. Otherwise, it should be much more easy for them to get more than 50%, I think. Yeah, it's also one of the most important factors we should think about it. In this situation, worsening of economy, for my idea, always helps to Justice and Development Party, AKP. Why? Because they are the only party on the ground organizing support networks. And they are the only party, except the Kurdish party, they are the only party on the ground organizing problem-solving networks, actually, helping the poor people. I mean, because all these people supported AKP after 2001 election because of this. The Islamist parties are very well organized at the local level, at the municipality level. They contacted with the poor segments of the population. They create the kind of solidarity networks, as in the cases of Hamas, as in the cases of Muslim Brotherhood, as in the cases of Turkey. And they seem that for these people only answer. This is one part of the question. And second one, this Turkish society turned into a kind of debt society. If you look at the lower segment of population, they have a huge debt in comparison with their income. If you look at the middle segment of society, you see the same thing. And the crisis will deepen this problem, I mean, sustainability of the debt. Because of this, these two issues, I think, I mean, the GDP has a chance. I mean, when they say that we are the only address for stability, I mean, they have a chance to say something to these segments of societies, but we don't know yet whether opposition parties create alternative solidarity networks within society, or we don't know yet whether they will create alternative economic project vision to the society. I'm sure they will gonna, in crisis situation, they will leave some kind of problem. I mean, the Erdogan government will leave some kind of problems, but they can overcome this. And the third factor is the Saudi Arabia and Qatar money is pumping out huge amount of money into Turkey, Qatar. I mean, we don't know, in economists writing about it, more than $15 billion, no one knows where this money comes from. And they believe that, these economists believe that this money is coming from, this money is Qatar money coming from London to Turkey. It's a short-term capital investment. I mean, but we don't know clearly. I mean, there's no transparency about this as well. But it will obviously create huge problems. And it's already coming. I mean, Turkish economy is already a very fragile situation. I mean, the best way is always support, I mean, the democratic principles and the people who is supporting such kind of principles in their own country. I mean, there should be such kind of solidarity networks. These countries should build such kind of solidarity networks, as in the cases of academics, for instance. Solidarity networks with the teachers, solidarity networks with the human rights associations, solidarity networks with the people who is trying to do something for the democratization in the Turkey. I mean, in the Turkish case, for instance, the direct pressure is always, you know, because of the nationalistic feelings. I mean, for instance, I mean, the AKP using very well such kind of nationalistic feeling and manipulating the people's feeling. I mean, Germany is always do this like us, and the USA is always do this like us. I mean, I don't think such kind of state-centered pressure is not working, I mean, very well. But the more solidarity kind of networks, or these kind of pressures, I mean, these kind of bonds within society works very much better. I think we should create such kind of networks.
Maybe. In that connection, the whole question of the EU and membership of the EU. I mean, we've been hearing that many in Turkey didn't believe in any case that they would be able to, that Turkey would be a member of the EU.
Yeah.
Is there any kind of leverage through the EU, just to carry on with Basrun's question? Or is that just something which won't work in any case?
Yeah, I think there is kind of leverage. I mean, the EU's signals is always important for the Turkish people, even the people against the AKP. I mean, people. I mean, when I remember the last surveys, still 60% of the people supporting the membership to the EU. I mean, the EU is important leverage for the Turkish people. I mean, this kind of clear signs to support to democracy in Turkey, it's always affected these people and feel themselves more strong against such kind of authoritarian policies. I mean, it's very important. If they are so cautious, I mean, it's not working very well. In this case, it's not. It seems that it's not working. But if the EU give really clear signs that they're supporting the democratic principles in the Turkish context, they are gonna support the democratic forces, I'm sure it will find some kind of response among the opposition or the people who is supporting AKP. I mean, we cannot, say that all these people is against EU. Some part of the AKP people supporting AKP is also supporting the membership process. They know that this is the future of Turkey is also related with this. They don't support isolation. It's important, I think.
Okay. Just a positive note.
Yeah.
Further questions or comments?
It's too much things happening in Turkey. So if you are interested in Turkish politics, first thing I can say, you will never get bored. Because every day is something new. Every day is an adventure. You can miss that, oh, Republic is over. Oh, again, established again, just in a day. This is a sign that, the Erdogan and President Erdogan appointing people more close to and more loyal to his projects. Even these people seem not loyal enough to the project I am talking about. He is preparing the new cabinet for the election at 2019, actually. This is a cabinet will fight for push these policies for 2019, actually, as far as I see. I just checked several names. And I saw that several heads of the party frustrated too, because they were, keep supporting Erdogan until now, and then they seem very frustrated. Yeah, and then I saw their social media statuses, several of them. It's also a sign, a kind of, because there is no, strong meritocracy anymore. Not in the state, but not in the party anymore. Actually, all these old AKP elites are more talented and they know very well the state. Even if we didn't approve their policies, for instance, we know that they know state very well, how the state functions. They have an idea of administrative law, they have an idea of, for instance, structure of state, these kind of things. But this recent group is just loyal. Their only quality is just being loyal to Erdogan's policies, President Erdogan's policies. They don't have any such kind of meritocracy. He didn't touch the elites in economy until now. There are only a couple of top elites in the economy ministries, and then the rest is, their character is just loyal. You are right at pointing out that Turkish democracy, the future of Turkish democracy is directly related with the Kurdish question, because too much energy is, condensed around the Kurdish question. This is very important about the democratization of society in general. And I can say that until now, the AKP seems successful in pacifying the most politicized sections of the Kurdish society, but we don't know how long it will continue. After the 7th June election, we saw for the first time the emergence of a different kind of political Kurdish party, which is extremely, very political in a good sense, appealing to the different segments of society. Maybe it will become a maybe major opposition party in the future. Maybe it will replace CHP and CHP in the future. It seems like that. But AKP has been so successful in manipulating this political sphere, and then the war started, as you know, between PKK and state, and then all this political sphere has been collapsed, and Kurdish issue become once again an issue of sovereignty, whether it will be Turkey divided or not. I mean, and then this segment of Kurdish politicians has been pacified, of course, has been suppressed. They lost the ground actually against AKP, and now there are now two forces. I mean, again, we don't know how long this balance will continue. Actually, this balance is always shaky, is always undecided, because it depends on power politics only. I mean, if really the Kurdish party became again strong political actor, it can create extra pressure in times of crisis, and politicians can't do such kind of crisis and armed struggle. Politicians can do nothing. That's the problem. And for this, we need to see again the empowerment of politics in Turkey. I mean, empowerment of Kurdish politics and democratic politics in general. Otherwise, it's very difficult to see such kind of solution or return of strong democratic Kurdish politics again. It seems difficult. Right now, the second part of the question, the destiny of Erdogan and destiny of the party has been totally combined. It seems like that. Everyone around the President Erdogan is now seeing their destiny in his power. That's the problem. And then, as a political scientist, I can say that when President Erdogan openly lost 1 or 2 elections, I mean, the AKP will disappear. As a party, it's very difficult to sustain AKP without Erdogan, without President Erdogan. It seems impossible because so much penetrated. I mean, the party became the party of Erdogan. Actually, he is appointing every member of the important position in the party. But still, there is a hope of some people. They believe that old ex-president Abdullah Gül, Davutoğlu will revitalize the party and then will again sustain the AKP. I don't see in such kind of, it happens in every kind of authoritarian regime. And when the party is merged with one name, it is highly difficult to separate. But we will not know what will happen next. We are not sure. For instance, Peronist party lived after Peron, but Peron is not Erdogan. We should keep in mind that Peron is different populist. Recep Tayyip Erdogan is different politicians. And the AKP is part of different kind of political project, but the Peronist party is part of different kind of political project. I don't think because of this there will be AKP after Erdogan. There will be some Islamic parties, movements, there is already, but there will not anymore such huge dominant party, I think. Maybe wishful thinking, I don't know.
Many thanks. I'm sure this is a conversation we shall be